Hey guys, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Nuns. Today we're starting Luke chapter 5. Let's get started.
Okay, let me go ahead and give you permission on something, okay? Because I'm giving myself permission here. I'm going to give myself permission and you permission to have your own favorite stories, okay? It is okay to love some of these moments and let them, like when you think about Jesus, to have these moments stand out. This chapter is some of those moments for me. So when I think about Jesus and I'm picturing what Jesus did in his daily life, one of the things that excites me about reading about Jesus is typically I think of Jesus always kind of being with the crowds. So he is teaching, he's got the Sermon on the Mount, he's teaching and he's preaching, he's doing all these kind of things. But then I come to chapters like this and I recognize how very often Jesus does the most important moments when it's just him and somebody else. So he spends his time with the crowd, but he never doesn't have time for just average people. So I love the story about when the friends dropped the guy through the ceiling. I think that's a wonderful picture of compassion, even evangelism, bringing our friends to Jesus, of faith. I love that. I love the story of the catching a lot of fish. Matter of fact, when me and a buddy used to go fishing, we would bring our Bible. And on the drive there, he'd be driving, and I'd sit over there, and before we'd go fishing, every time I'd read this story, and I'd be like, Lord, let it be. Drop our nets down and catch us a ton of fish. I love when Jesus uses fishing or farming or something because it just kind of connects. I love all that stuff. I love how these disciples, how even though they're fishermen, and that most of the fish they caught would have been in shallow waters, Jesus takes them out into the deep waters to fish, and they just go and they do what they're told. I love that. I love how whenever you're reading through this, there are big questions and there are wonderful moments. For instance, I like where in verse number 26 where it says, they glorified God and they were filled with fear, saying, we have seen strange things today. I wrote in my Bible some time ago, a couple of years ago, I said, I want to see strange things from the Lord today too. And here's the deal. I think most of us don't see things because we're not looking for things. But when we try to see our day with the Lord, I think sometimes we get them. So it helps me whenever I'm reading a chapter of the Bible, if I'm trying to understand it, it helps me to form all of my readings by doing this, knowing what the chapter is about, asking myself one question, and then reading the text and letting the text answer for me as to give the answer to that. So here was my question over this text. What does it mean to be a follower of Jesus? What does it mean to be a disciple? I think that's a big deal, by the way, because in the story about Jesus and the disciples catching all those fish, it means that even when I have an opinion about what I think is right or best, like Peter, he does this. He says, Lord, we fished all night and we've caught nothing. Nevertheless, because you say so, Lord, we're going to do it. I think that's discipleship. I think it's discipleship to look at it and go, whatever you say is what we're going to do. I also like the idea that disciples, like these fishermen, they knew that to draw in the nets, you had to have a team. These disciples were going to be a team together. I like that. I like how whenever we're finding Jesus cleanse the leper, that what is a disciple? A disciple is ultimately somebody who Jesus has made clean, and then they turn around and they follow him. When Jesus heals the man who's paralyzed, what does it mean to be a disciple? We bring folks to the master, and then we get up glorifying him and praising God for all that he's done. What does it mean to be a disciple? Matthew, the tax collector, leaves his booth and follows Jesus. By the way, two great calling stories here. Matthew is called at the end of this chapter. At the beginning, Peter leaves everything and follows Jesus. Now, here's what's interesting about that. John chapter 1 tells us that Peter had already decided to follow Jesus. And yet in this moment, which happens later, he's back to fishing. So did he only partially commit, or did he backtrack a little bit, or did he just kind of struggle? We don't know, but here's what we do know. After this moment, he left everything and followed Jesus. That's what disciples do. Jesus is talked to, they question him about fasting, and he gives this answer about not combining old wine or old wineskins and new wine because they'll burst, and old clothing being patched with new clothing because what's he saying? He's saying, listen, the old ways are incompatible with the new ways. When you're my disciple, I'm going to make all things new. The old and the new are going to be incompatible. That's why I'm just going to make you new. What does it mean to be a disciple? And I can walk through each of these stories and go, oh, there's something. John, you got something out of this. What was it?
Okay, so even though all of these stories are just like completely awesome and some of the easiest reads in the entire Bible, I feel like we can still sometimes miss some of like the true biggest meanings and the true biggest things out of these. For example, the one where Jesus heals the paralyzed man. So when you immediately think about this chapter, that's the first thing you think of, how Jesus healed this person who couldn't move, and that's still a miracle for us today, even with, our medical science and stuff. However, it also says that Jesus forgave this man and his friends of their sins, and that is just way more important of any physical boundaries that would have been set on this man.
Yeah, I think you're right in that, if we wanted to gauge what's the biggest miracle that Jesus did, was it a bigger miracle that he turned water into wine or that he raised the dead? Well, we'd probably say raised the dead. Is it a bigger miracle that he walked on water or that he gave sight to the blind? I don't know, too big. Yeah. Is it a bigger miracle that he calmed the seas or that he healed the leper? I mean, hey, listen, which one's the more important? I don't know. But I do know that in this one, I think we have at least a good answer. Mm-hmm. What was the bigger miracle of that story? Not that Jesus healed the man's legs, but that Jesus forgave the man's what?
Sins.
That's right. That Jesus forgave. I think if I'm looking at my own life going, what's the biggest thing Jesus has ever done for me? I'm telling you, the family that he's given me is wonderful. The life that he's given me, I'm blown away by. I'm so grateful. But the biggest thing Jesus has ever done for me is save me from my sins. And so when Jesus says to these Pharisees, he says, so that you will know that the Son of Man has power to forgive sins, he said, I'm going to give you a sign. And he raises the man up. I want to say, I think we ought to be able to look at a believer's life and the change that Jesus brought, and we go, oh, that's evidence of the power that he forgave them of their sins because he's made them new. He's changed them. I think that's what we're finding here. We'll see you tomorrow in Luke chapter number 6. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.